Hello and welcome. Today I'm going to be playing Risk of Rain, which is the roguelike, instead of going back to what I was playing, Tiny Rogues, just to get some change. After having played Tiny Rogues, it got kind of samey after a while, and I felt like I should play something a little bit different, but my choice of game was Risk of Rain 2 because I've been meaning to play it for a while. Well, I've been meaning to play it more, just in general. It's a really cool game. It's way less simple. Oh yeah, action reload. I need to figure out the action reload. But it's way less simple than Tiny Rogues, with how like upgrades and stuff work. So it's gonna be a little bit more. It's gonna occupy my mind a little bit more, so it'll be harder to stay on topic, but I don't know what that is. Oh, I'm pressing R to reload, but that's not the button. The reload R is the super shot. I'm just not playing correctly. Okay. Yeah, I'll figure it out as I go. I know there's something you can grab from this. I don't know enough about it to bother. But today, I was thinking of trying to talk about Panlong / Coiling Dragon, which is I don't know if it's I don't know the pronunciation anyway, but like Xiaxian or wuxia. I think it's probably wuxia, but it's one of those types of Chinese novels. It might have been a web novel, I'm not sure, but it's that type of Chinese novel. What is it? Okay, it doesn't do that. I can't figure out how to use these. Okay, it just takes a while. And I'm going to talk about that because I'm trying to keep Wednesday to being focused around books that I've read in the past that I can remember some elements of, but have not read super recently, just sort of as a way to look at how, like, what elements of them stuck around for me. So if I start talking about Panlong, I would say, the biggest thing with it is that it was probably one of the first wuxia, I don't know, type stories that I've read. And so it definitely has an unreasonable degree of, like, I definitely see it more positively than I expect I would if I had not read it as, like, the first thing I ever read, or as one of the first things I ever read. But I will start by talking just sort of about what I felt was valuable about this, like, was well written, well established in the story. Let's just do that, and then try and find this. I think this game might be a little difficult to actually talk about another topic while playing. Mostly because I have no idea what I'm doing. But I'll try. And actually, as part of not knowing what I'm doing, just as a note for anyone who doesn't know how this game works, the difficulty of the game increases the longer you play, which means that as long as I am wandering around doing nothing productive, I'm actually getting weaker relatively over time. It's in my best interest to move on a bit and make progress, get stronger. But it is what it is. I'll probably die very quickly in this run. But But now to talk about Panlong. What stuck with it to me, the part of Panlong that stuck with me the most was the fact that, like, while it is fairly luck-centric as a story, like, the character gets a great deal of luck. It's also the case that at least within the setting of the story, he's not just lucky. Like, obviously, it's just the main characters, so they just sort of can do everything, but I think it does a good job of not emphasizing to too great of an extent on having, like, lucky scenarios be the only thing that actually makes them relevant. I'm gonna die, because this game has fall damage. I kinda don't like that it has fall damage, that's just personal. But yeah, that's a part of it. But I think what appealed to me the most about Panlong was the way it handled, at least from the first time I read it, because it was new to me. I like the way that it handled, like, power gain, power growth for people. Like, it was all about, like, the characters had to gain understanding of, you know, I don't remember if it explicitly used the term Tao. It might have, but, like, they had to gain understanding of specific aspects of the world, and through those, they gained power based on subsections of that, like, topic. I have no idea where the teleport I'm supposed to go to is, and that's one of my issues with this game, because sometimes it's just a struggle to just locate the most basic part of the game. I bet it's somewhere really obvious. I bet it's, like, right up there. But the fact that I'm doing this and not making any progress is troubling. It's not up there, I'm pretty sure. Like, it has to be... Oh, is there even further up? I hope not. But, what's that? Metal. But the way... oh, it's a moon coin or whatever. Lunar coin. Like, the fact that the character growth was not... It was... While it was somewhat unique to each individual, it wasn't something totally unique. Like... Oh, that's a teleport right there, I'm just blind. Like, it was established that every element, or whatever, or whatever point of study the people had, every element had X number of mysteries that when put together, that when combined, sort of represent that, like, concept or element. I'm gonna die from fall damage. Yep, great fun. Got absolutely blasted into the air, which was partially my own fault, but only half my own fault. I'm only playing this character because it's the only character I've had any actual success with, and while I want to unlock Acrid because of Risk of Rain 1, which I played for a bit, it's just the exact same map, what? But because of, I want to unlock Acrid, but this character, the R and then shoot, if the enemy is a type that has a bunch of, like, those red weak points, you just one-shot them, which is incredibly strong, and kind of makes it possible to see more of the game when you're bad at the game like me. But anyway, in Panlong, the each element or concept has a set number of mysteries. Every character learns these mysteries, and as they learn enough of them, they increase in rank and become stronger, and that's sort of how that type of thing works. But each character still has different combat proficiency capabilities because they have their own like spin on applying these sorts of mysteries. Like instead of, it's sort of a mix of every character or person in this world has the same potential underlying power or like abilities potentially, but even if they have this, even if they've learned the same, you know, mysteries of the world, I want to plug it. It's move speed. I think, yeah. Even if they've learned the same mysteries of the world, the way they apply them is different, and it keeps it, so it's an easy way to establish that every person that is met throughout the story is different in one way or another. And like a lot of these types of stories, everyone has their own like specialty, and what these the specific applications mattering, what this helps with is it means that just because a character is a light-centric, like this element they study is light, that doesn't mean that they are always going to be super good at shooting light beams or something. They're all going to have some common traits. Like, light is fast, so people who are centered around like the mystery or whatever the term was of light, they have a tendency of being faster. Like, there's commonalities between individuals who have learned or trained in the same specific mystery or Tao or whatever, but it's not the case that everyone is the same. It's like, it adds a certain, like, people can make predictions about the people that they are fighting, but they can never know for sure. Which I think kind of, from a world perspective, I think that's fun. Okay, I thought I ran past there and there was no teleporter. So did the teleporter only show up after a certain amount of time? I can't imagine that being the case. So I could just jump and just regen. So if I do this, I'll heal. Yeah. But yeah, that's sort of how I definitely goes with. That's sort of how I find the power system, the mechanics behind strength in the story. That's sort of what I find appealing about them. But I also like how the scale of the story grows. Like, initially, because of, you know, circumstances, the main character is only able to be a wizard or whatever the specific term was. And so the story initially seems like, oh, he's just gonna be a wizardy person. But eventually a solution is found as one who, if you've read enough of these types of stories, and they're like, oh, your bloodline is out of a wizard, is out of a warrior group, then it's not difficult to guess what will happen, and that he will eventually find a solution to his struggles regarding not being able to be a warrior. So it's not, well, it is a spoiler, I don't think it's the biggest spoiler, because if you actually have read this type of thing, it's very predictable that it all works out in the end. But okay, I got nuked. I'm gonna die. Yep, I'm bad at this game. I wonder if they nerfed it, because it was definitely like actually one-shotting stuff when I played last. But I doubt they did. I bet I just didn't, I bet it's just different hitboxes lining up correctly. Though I could have also just had crazy luck with hitboxes. But anyway, yeah, that's how the power works. And so, yeah, the spoiler is that it goes from being magic-centric to him becoming a warrior is a spoiler, but I don't think it's a shocking one. It's like, the story begins with like a clear differentiation between warriors and magic users, which like, the differentiation actually does matter in the early setting of the story, which like, I think it works pretty well for this, because it doesn't start off the story with, oh, everyone who fights has knowledge of basically the Tao. Like, it doesn't start with that right away. It's just the people train using pre-existing concepts and knowledge, and they become stronger using that, but it is constrained to like using chanting spells or similar concepts, or like all you're doing is becoming physically stronger, and it's limited in that way. But then once a certain level of power is reached, like, people start to have to improve themselves in a more, I don't know, mystical way. So instead of being like a sorcerer or a wizard, not a wizard at all, but it is a magic user as opposed to a fighter. Like, instead of being a fighter, they have to learn about the stuff, and eventually the distinction between fighters and magical casters sort of disappears. I mean, the characters still have their preferred fighting styles. So, like, some fight with weapons and some just blast stuff. But it eventually becomes the case that everyone it just is that they have their own fighting style. And that fighting style is not inherently limited to they're a magic user or they're a magic user or they're a warrior. So that's like, this change in the power style, the combat scope, is fairly interesting to me. And I think the fact, like, I don't think it's uncommon to have that type of change from, you know, the small scale to the bigger scale. Like, that's fairly common. But having it be that even the concept of the Tao or the mysteries of the universe, or whatever it was specifically called, because that wasn't very important, because it was just sort of a system in place that they worked with. But the fact that only people beyond a certain level of strength even knew about this is interesting, because it sort of makes sense. Because even if people tried to explain it, it's perfectly reasonable that they wouldn't understand, because they just don't have the necessary foundation to properly understand what was going on, or what was being talked about. Okay. I need him to put his... Okay, decent. Not great, but decent. Can I get behind something anymore? Not for me? Oh, I can shoot that. Good to know. But, okay, I couldn't focus because it was not trivial to me. I'm bad at the game. Prioritize when using uncommon 3D printers. Okay, basically 3D printers let you get specific items, but you have to trade an item for them. I think it's more or less how it works. For that, once per stage, I can do that at no risk of losing something else. I mean, I would have preferred to have gotten an actually good upgrade, probably, because I don't know how to use the 3D printers properly, but anyway. What I was trying to talk about with regards to Panlong and the scaling, yeah, it changes how it is. It's like, everyone needs a minimum foundation to be able to, you know, understand the underpinnings of the universe, which, like, makes sense. But it isn't a hard rule. It's just simply that they need... Because it's... I mean, in story, it's basically nobody starts learning about it until they become a saint. In the, you know, world's context. But once they achieve, like, once it's possible to like be attuned to the world much sooner, but that's all a matter of like talent and stuff, which obviously the main character is the best at in his specific world. But like another appealing component of the story that doesn't really get explored in any meaningful way is how in other, like, there's other worlds that are established. Like, what doesn't get explored about that is it's established that there are individuals who become demigods within weeks, months of being born, and so are just simply at a huge advantage compared to others. And oh, he's basically just put in place as like a way to say, oh, the main character isn't that special, despite the fact that, like, by nature of the story, they are. But yeah, that's sort of... The world eventually opens up to not alternate realities, different planes of existence, I think. And it's basically established that there's, like, individual material planes, or lesser planes, that people are born there, and it is expensive to leave, well, no, it's free to leave, but it's expensive to return because it's all a scam. But it is also sort of, it's an interesting element that's established is that individuals who achieve beyond a certain level of strength, who reach a level of strength beyond a certain extent, cannot enter these lesser planes, otherwise they would just destroy it. But it also establishes that there's an exception to this, and that is that if it's your original world, you can return. And this is just sort of I think, a fun mechanism to establish in the world. It's not the best, but it's fun. But I think what I'll try to do now, moving forward talking, because I'm just rambling. I'm gonna try and talk through the story in chronological order. Not too much detail or anything, but just talking about where the story goes, how it evolves, and sort of how it handles characters, sort of. I assume that... Okay, I don't want that. I'd rather have healing, probably. But, so what I'm going to start with is where the main character begins his journey, which it begins with him just being like the son of the local lord of his area, and like it's established they're nice people. They're within the realm of nobility, very poor because they don't want to overtax their people, which is just establishing that, oh, they're good people. That's all it really does. It's the only purpose it really serves. Will this work? I mean, that's not... Okay, so it wasn't an uncommon one, so it didn't work. I would actually rather have that, though, than a random crit. But the story starts there, with his family, you know, being kind of poor, because they are Dragon Blood warriors, which actually does have a fun reveal eventually. But yeah, they're Dragon Blood warriors, but they've fallen on hard times because they haven't had, like, good luck with regards to their genetics passing down the capability to transform into a draconic sort of form. Which, like, nowadays that's kind of not the most important story beat, but like, it is relevant because it is used to establish that the main character, despite all of his attempts, will be unable to become a proper, like, warrior combatant because his group of people are incapable of training, like, their inner energy without the use of the specific manual that pertains to their bloodline, but just because so he's prevented from training using another manual, but he doesn't have enough, like, bloodline, like, connection to his bloodline to actually even, like, train using the manual. But he will never be able to, without something changing, which it does. He would never be able to properly... He would never be able to train as a warrior. And so, he will, if he wants to gain strength, he'll have to find some other method, which he does, but an important early game plot point, but it kind of becomes irrelevant later in the story, is that he finds a ring. Actually, the ring itself is actually very important long term, but within the scale of these, within the first, like, 10 books, it becomes less relevant quickly, but he ends up finding a ring that, when he bleeds on it, he, you know, soul binds it. Like, I don't remember if it's soul bind or blood bind or whatever the term used was. It's the concept of it is bound to his soul now, because he put blood on it. There should be some loot here, but there wasn't. Oh, bye. But that's what happens. He gets a ring. The ring has a ghost of someone who I think is a saint, which is the weakest of the weakest of the stronger people, like of the it's the weakest tier of individual at the next tier of like existence, basically. But I think it's established that the ghost person that comes from the ring, it was a saint in the past who got ambushed and killed, but bound their soul to the ring they were wearing because it is a ring which protects. It's a soul protection ring. It's an artifact. And this ring is like, it is shaped like a Coiling Dragon, which is where the story gets its name, or that's the name. And what this means, and this saint individual was also I messed up. It's also a wizard, or a spellcaster type of combatant, which then gives the main character a method to begin learning about magic and, you know, casting spells, which he then leaps onto as an opportunity to actually be strong in the world, because it's weirdly and aggressively, well, it's not weird that it's aggressively combat focused, because that's just the type of world that needs to be established in this type of story. But strength is everything. It's like the most important thing, and so he wants to become a wizard, a magic user. I'm gonna say wizard. It's definitely not wizard in the story, but I'm gonna call him a wizard because that's the easiest. Actually, I'll try to say mage. But he becomes a mage, and so he ends up going to school to study magic. He does, you know, he's like the best in his year and all that because it's that type of story. But he studies, he improves, and then he makes a few friends who are relevant long term. They actually are relevant in the story until it leaves this plane, at which point they mostly stop being relevant, except for as specific plot arc. Like, there are specific plot arcs where they are relevant, but outside of those, they don't matter after a certain point in the story. But for the first part of the story, they are relevant. I've never seen this map, so I actually hate it. Some of these maps always feel kind of iffy with regards to finding the teleporter. And the one that I've struggled the most with finding a teleporter is one that's, I think, the same, like, stage. Like, I think it's a third stage. Nothing. I got gold. How much damage? Do I have a mushroom? No, I don't. No point in standing still. But within the first stage, he makes friends who matter. And then eventually, as part of the story, his mentor is brought up as having been a master sculptor. But he used sculpting as a way to connect with the earth, because he was an earth magus. Yes, magus is the exact term they used. He was an earth magus, and so he, like, attuned himself to the rock he carved, or the stone he carved. It's definitely not the correct phrase. But this then becomes, he learns how to sculpt, and he becomes he gains strength as a magus faster and faster. I keep pressing R to reload, but I don't want to. He gains the strength of a magus. He eventually gains acclaim as a sculptor. And these sorts of components are they're just meant as, like, like, not get out of jail free, but they're just meant, they just seem to always be, oh, pin sculpting is an easy way to justify him gaining an inhuman amount of strength at a far greater speed than anyone else. Like, a lot of these are contrivances for him to maintain his superiority, which it's not the best, but it's not bad, it's not awful. I have no idea what either of those are. But like, plot-wise, it's fine. It's not the most compelling part of the story, but it is the part of the story that, while it's not the most unique, is still the most rereadable, because it doesn't get too, like, it doesn't try to be too serious about it. It just sort of has a story, and like, the character is too good at everything, which is, he's absurdly good at basically everything, which is unreasonable, but it's not awful. I found the way it is told, but it is what it is overall. But I'm just lost trying to find this teleporter. This is my least favorite part about this game, and why I always play for a bit and then never again, and then I play again in like 6 months. I hate trying to find teleporters, because I'm bad at looking for them. And like, the fact that the game gets harder the longer you just run around means you want to find it quickly. Like, I bet I've seen it and just ignored it because it's just not as noticeable as I feel like it should be. But here's this. I have no idea. Is that a portal? No idea what that does. Chance to collapse enemy on hit. Corrupts all tri-tipped daggers. No idea what that means. I have no idea what that was. I bet it was from the whatever the Void expansion was. No portal over here, I think. Could be something over there. But 93% risk it. I'm not dead. But I got distracted again, because this game is tilting me out of my mind because I have no idea what I'm doing. But yes, he does all that. There's a moment where he is dumped and it causes issues. He makes a statue to let out his feelings, and then it is eventually used as a way for him to make an incredible amount of money. But that's sort of, there's basically a school arc in which he grows on a base level. I'm so lost. Like, maybe I need to go into here or something, like... Okay, that does damage me. I expect it to. I hate that R is not reload. I'm used to the concept of actually reloading guns. Okay, it has to be underground or something, right? If it's not underground, where is it? I have no idea what this does. Oh, it just makes it bigger. That's cool. Hey, I got an achievement. Has to be underground, but I'm looking for it, right? But yes, this is a school arc. The school arc ends with a major happening that is fairly plot relevant. obviously it's plot relevant if it's a major happening, but I'm not gonna talk too much. It's like, as relevant as it is plot-wise... Actually, no. The school arc doesn't end there. It's just the broader arc that I sort of combine with the school arc ends shortly after this, but like this... The school arc ends with him just graduating because he's better than everyone. But he then right after graduating he visits his father, or he visited his father before. Doesn't really matter because it's not really important to the long-term plot. It's just meant as, oh no. It's just a, like, plot point to establish motives. I'm so lost. There has to be some way to actually find these when you're terrible at the game like me. Like, was it right here the whole time? No. I mean, I'm gonna die on the boss because they're gonna three-shot me because I'm already on very hard, approaching insane, and I'm not gonna be finding the teleporter before it got insane. It's right there. I wanna die. I hate this game. Oh, this game frustrates me. See, that's the big part about this character. Dealing half of their total health in one hit is what makes this character kind of, I think, probably one of the easiest. Like, I can't imagine there's another character that's easier than that. I hate this enemy. This enemy is terrible. This enemy is garbage design. That is garbage design. That's not fun at all. Playing one more time before I give up on this game, and I'm gonna be done soon anyway because I'm bad at keeping a concept in my head and talking about it for a long time, but that boss is bad. But the school arc ends. He then is a highly sought after individual because he's the youngest to ever become a 7-star, level 7, or whatever. The 7th level of like 10 that is the like mortal level of strength. Like a 7th level magus. And so he's sought after. And then as part of this, he also begins to... His father has died around then, or shortly before then. And he wants to search for who killed him, and what happened. Yes, his father does die, I think. No, yeah, his father definitely dies. He's just eventually brought back from the dead. Sort of. But his father dies. He goes hunting for them. He figures out one of the steps along the chain of what led to his father's death. And he then starts working. He accepts the offer to work from someone who is in a position to easily be interacted with, like, so that there's a easier way for him to like hunt after the people who killed his father. And that then leads to him eventually being put in jail because he killed / attacked the wrong person, because the person who killed his father was... I'm gonna die. I hate this game. escaped to a point out of my mind. So I'm gonna finish telling this part of the story. I'm gonna stop streaming soon because actually no, I'm not gonna. I want to play a little more. I don't actually want to play it that much, but I want to keep going until I get to a better stopping point in this story. I don't remember how this character works. And then control goes invis, and then you can backstab. And then R is... what was... oh! The R is a big hit, and if it kills, it instantly cools down. And the right click is melee. Yes, this is how this character works. There's something... you want to stack the R a bunch, I think. Or there's an achievement for it. I'm definitely not going to do well this run, because I don't have the easy-ish insta-delete button. But... so the story of Panlong, he's arrested. He gets broken out in an event that occurs due to his own... something he did in the past caused basically a huge criminal, but not really a criminal necessarily, to escape a prison. This criminal then begins an event which, like, absorbs a bunch of the world into their own domain. And then that breaks him out of prison and he escapes, and he journeys through the mountains, you know, attuning himself with nature. And that's when he first makes his connection to the deeper, underlying mysteries of the universe, mysteries of the world. And that's like an okay part of the story. It's a fairly, like, he gains power, and that's like, most of these types of stories, I think, are centered around the character. Like, it's, I think a term that I have seen is like progression fantasy, where the primary goal when reading the stories like that, is seeing the characters become stronger. The progression of the characters is what's the most appealing component. Like, that's, I think, what this to me sort of falls under. And it's fun, but he gets stronger. He gets a second animal companion, but this second animal companion doesn't really matter. And he has an animal companion from the start of the story the entire time. They matter, but they don't actually matter. Like, plot-wise, they're important. And, like, they're a comedic relief character, but they're not, like... very few characters matter as much as they could. Like, they aren't meaningless. Like, most of the characters are not a complete waste of time, but they also generally aren't... they don't push the story forwards much, if at all. It's all the main character doing stuff that pushes the story forward. Or it's mostly the main character that pushes the story forward. There are a few elements, points at which other people push the story forward. But he is stronger after journeying through a mountain and a forest and whatever. But yes, he grows in strength. He eventually makes contact with one of the only demigods, I think is the stage used in the story. The demigods... yes, because there's demigod, half-god, and high-god or something. Those terms are kind of lame. That could just be the translation. It might be more... it might be much smoother in the original story. I doubt it, but it's possible. I just want to check if I can... tab... oh, I can check what these do. Shotgun... critical strikes, hemorrhage... I think one of my issues is just I've gotten distracted by Risk of Rain again. one of my issues with Risk of Rain is how it is very I can't even say what I'm thinking. Like, whenever I played the first game, I didn't play it that much, and I think I maybe beat it once at best. But like, I always feel the need to just run around killing stuff, farming stuff. But that's not really the best way to play it, as far as I can tell. Like, you want to progress through it quickly. You want to get enough loot, but you don't want to linger on one level. Like, there are strategies surrounding lingering on one level for a long time, but I think generally it's get what you can get and get out is the best way to play it. I mean, that's pretty satisfying. Except then I get beat up by random. Those enemies on hit. I'm glad this game just has a really short cooldown, actually. I should actually be using this. But I got distracted again. Panlong has part of the story that is interesting to me about it. Where was I talking? I was talking about him meeting this demigod, which is like established as the level at which individuals are fully immortal. But there's also they gain, at that point they're capable of, they get a core that they can either absorb into their body or create a new body around while splitting their soul, which is a fun component to the story, I think. Like, having clones and stuff is always a useful element in these types of stories. I think this might, no it's not, it's a new area that I've never seen. That looks suspicious. But clones, demigod, he meets the demigod, he learns sort of some truths of the world. I hate this. He learns some truths about the world and he eventually learns that he can leave this world, go to others, but it's dangerous. And he also learns that people from outside of this plane would want to visit that plane because there is treasure there that's valuable. And as the story continues to progress, I'm just gonna straight up rush the boss. Like, I'm not gonna spend too long here. All these stupid double... Where are they? Lovely gameplay. Boss summon that doesn't summon a boss. And my delicate watch is exploding. Where is the boss? I'm gonna stop there with this game because I'm tilted. Anyway, that story's done. This game's over. So, just while I sit here, I'm gonna get to the end of this part of the story. So, he meets the demigod. I'm skipping a ton of information anyway, but he meets the demigod. He learns about it. I think before this he's already a saint. And then he's improving his strength. And there's like two separate tiers of saints, or multiple tiers of saints. There's the ones that are actually very good and the ones that are mediocre. That's not an important thing without in-world context. So he learns information. There's a trial that they eventually go to. He goes through the trial. By the end of the trial, he becomes demigod himself. And then following this, there's a big war with the religion of the world, the primary religion, because this religion, which it's explained later, this religion was set up by one of the sovereigns, which are the highest tier people, as a way to funnel faith that they can then use themselves. But in this plane, that church gets basically wiped out. More combat occurs. People who are stuck in a prison escape. There's a bunch of fighting. It gets mostly dealt with. And by this point, the main character is still a demigod, but in like 4 different elements at this point. I think he is maybe only 2 or 3. Not very important without context in the story. And then following this, and his wife, who is not an exceptionally strong character, but is not the worst female character in a Chinese novel that I've seen. She's at least decently competent, and she's not just a target for the main character. And there is actually somewhat of a story progress with them, which is better than many. And his rat pet, his wife and his rat pet, who isn't a pet, but like they're friends, but they have a specific soul bond. They are half gods. I think there's 3 tiers of gods: demigods, half gods, high gods, demigods, mid gods, high gods. They're the middle tier. His wife didn't get there through her own power. She had a core, because it's established that you can absorb the cores of others. But since you didn't actually learn this information, while you can use it, you won't be able to progress as well, or at all, and you won't be able to fight as effectively because you don't have as good of an understanding, which I think is an excellent mechanism for allowing quick power gain while having a solid negative, which is, it's great. I think that's a great component of the story. But now they're at those levels of power. They travel outside of their plane to see the world beyond, because it's basically established that other than like half a dozen people, at that point the main character is one of the 10 strongest on his plane. So there's less reason for him to stay, because he'll grow faster elsewhere. And that's sort of what I view as the first major block in the story before he leaves to the outer, bigger planes, and it's that second block where he's in the other planes and stuff. I find drags a bit. It's not as interesting, but it's not absolutely awful. It just, rereading it, once I get to there rereading it, it just becomes a slog. The like 2 or 3 times that I've gotten there while rereading, I haven't been able to get much further. It's not the worst story. There's interesting worlds that are built. There's interesting moments. But yeah, that's where I'm gonna stop for today because I'm tilted out of my mind playing Risk of Rain 2. Tomorrow I'm probably gonna stream again, same time. I don't know what I'm gonna talk about. I might continue talking about Panlong, trying to get the rest of the story. But I'm definitely not playing Risk of Rain 2 because it's so frustrating. I'm gonna play Enter the Gungeon, which I haven't played in several years. Yeah, no one's watching, but